The new administration, clearly is wanting to make, the U.S. the capital for crypto, and make sure that we're not missing a beat when it comes to innovation in general and with respect to crypto. And I think that's very, very positive. So
this episode is brought to you by BitGo, which is a top-tier crypto custodian that has been in the industry since 2013. It's headed up by Mike Belshew, who's a Web 1.0 and 2.0 legend. BitGo provides incredible services in addition to custody. They allow you to manage your tokens, get all types of liquidity, and much more. And some of the companies that use BitGo include Bitstamp Exchange, SWE, the token project, Pantera Capital, that's Dan Moorhead, as well as 21 Shares, which issues Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs. Some of the great services that BitGo provides includes wallet services, which is secure, trusted, scalable wallet solutions. Prime services, which allows you to get seamless access to liquidity and capital. It also allows you to list, manage, and grow your ecosystem. And they have what's called the Go Network, which is a secure real-time global settlement. Recently, BitGo launched a retail platform that allows you to trade, stake, and of course, custody your crypto assets. And this is a great solution because it provides you with top-tier crypto security, and security is, of course, a big factor in investing in crypto. And BitGo is offering an incredible incentive as they launch this platform where you can get a chance to win Bitcoin. They're giving away at least one Bitcoin every quarter. So if you sign up and have funds on the platform through the last day of each quarter, starting December 31st, 2024, you can be eligible to win some free Bitcoin here. So if you'd like to learn more about BitGo, go to bitgo.com. Link will be in the description. Hey everyone, welcome into the Thinking Crypto podcast. I'm your host, Tony Edward, and my guest today is Bobby Zagotta, who is the CEO of Bitstamp USA and Global Chief Commercial Officer. Bobby, great to have you on.
Great to be here, Tony.
Bobby, as we were talking about before the recording, I'm an OG user of Bitstamp. I remember back in, I think it was 2017, transferring funds over to Bitstamp in Europe. Buying some Bitcoin and then using some of that Bitcoin to buy altcoins. So I have a lot of background with Bitstamp, so I'm really excited to chat with you and learn about what you guys are up to these days. But let's start with your background. Tell us about yourself, where you're from, and your professional background.
Well, first of all, great to hear that you're a customer. Love to hear that. I've been with Bitstamp 3.5 years, just about. I joined as CEO for the U.S., as you mentioned, and shortly thereafter took on this Global Chief Commercial Officer role. Prior to this, I was at Kraken, so another crypto exchange. I was a Chief Commercial Officer there for 3 years. And prior to that, I was on the traditional financial services side at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, CME Group. And I was a member of the leadership team there. I ran a couple of different divisions. And as a matter of fact, it was there that I got involved in crypto, interestingly, because I had responsibility for our venture capital arm, CME Ventures. And that team started pitching me on crypto and blockchain investments in late 2013. And we started investing in 2014 in some notable early stage crypto companies, including Ripple, for instance. And I got quite involved. I was a board observer at Ripple for a couple of years. And it really opened up my mind to the possibilities of this technology, not only for the world and for society, but for a company like CME Group. And we ended up working really hard to get that board of directors comfortable with the idea of a Bitcoin futures product, which we ultimately did. Although it was difficult. We were seeking approval for this in 2016, which was still quite early for let's call it mainstream traditional financial services companies to be thinking about such a thing. But we were successful in getting the board to approve it. We launched it in 2017. Of course, many people thought we were crazy at the time, but it's turned out to be a really, really strong product for them.
That's amazing that you were part of launching Bitcoin futures at the CME. And to this day, the CME is one of the kind of goalposts with the futures markets to having futures markets for different assets in the crypto space. I think even it's, when it comes to like getting spot ETF approved, excuse me, they kind of look to the CME to ensure the futures market is established there.
Yeah, it's obviously plays a critical role in the evolution of asset classes and assets, not just the CME, but the futures marketplace in general. It becomes the price discovery venue or venues for assets as they mature. And we're seeing that in the crypto marketplace as well today. The derivative side of the crypto marketplace is growing so fast and is so large today. It is becoming the price discovery mechanism for lots of instruments, including ETFs, of course, or eventually ETFs, of course.
Mm. Now, with your history, right, going back to like 2015 and so forth, and getting involved in crypto, what's it like looking back 10 years later? We're in 2025, of course, and seeing the growth with TradFi here, with spot ETFs, stablecoin market is booming. You have a pro crypto government and all these things in place.
It's just unbelievable, and particularly when the ETF approvals happened last year. Even though there was a lot of regulatory and still is, important regulatory gaps that need to be filled and other challenges. But when the ETF approvals came through, I took a moment to talk to some of my colleagues and some of my former colleagues and just say, hey, can we just enjoy this for a moment? Can we just step back? This was unthinkable, a few years ago. And so really quite amazing that we are seeing the progress and the mainstream acceptance, both on the part of institutions and retail investors that we're seeing now. And it also brings home for me the level of vision that the godfathers have, such as the founders of Bitstamp. Bitstamp was founded in 2011, right? It's the longest running crypto exchange. The foresight that those brilliant young men had at that time, and not just that, Brian Armstrong, Jesse Powell, these guys saw something, believed in it, and really invested their heart and soul in it. And so to answer your question, from my standpoint, I've been in the markets now for 6 or 7 years full time. It's amazing to see where we are, but it also reminds me what level of vision started back with the white paper.
Oh, absolutely. And do you feel like we've crossed the chasm, hit the tipping point where there's no going back? Like the genie's out the bottle. This thing is now, we're hitting the ground running. You got TradFi, you got the government on board. There's change in the regime of the SEC, and there's a crypto task force being formed at the SEC now that innovators, entrepreneurs can really put their heads down, start working, not worry about, getting a Wells notice and things like that. And we might see a big boom this year in the industry.
Yeah, I do. I think it's past the tipping point, to use your language. There's no going back. The validity and frankly the brilliance of the technology, the underpinning technology, and all of the potential applications around it, not just in financial services, but as has been well discussed in identity management and supply chain management, and the list goes on and on. There's no question that the United States and the world are going to make the most of this opportunity in lots of different ways and lots of different forms. And it might not be the way that it was originally envisioned by some of the godfathers I was just mentioning, but no question it will create great opportunities for individuals, for investors, and for people who are running businesses and moving money and all those good things. And I think in particular in the U.S., as you mentioned, right, the U.S. has been, there's been a bit of a governor on our progress by virtue of the lack of regulatory clarity and the fact that the past administration, seemed to be, actively or behind the scenes trying to slow the process. My feeling is they weren't sure what their position was, but they wanted to slow it down in the meantime. And they didn't do that in a very transparent way. The new administration, clearly is wanting to make, the U.S. the capital for crypto and make sure that we're not missing a beat when it comes to innovation in general and with respect to crypto. And I think that's very, very positive. So even today, where we're enjoying some really renewed interest and adoption, there's still a lot of people who have been on the sidelines, both individuals and institutions, waiting for a moment where they could get involved without feeling like a regulator might have a gun to their head, and them not really know about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's amazing the things that are on the table, even with the government, right? Stablecoin legislation, market structure legislation, and then you have the Bitcoin Reserve Bill. States individually are introducing Bitcoin Reserve bills. And then you also have the Elon talking about putting government spending on the blockchain, which I think, regardless of where you stand politically, you should know where your tax dollars are being, how they're being used, and how it's been spent, right? So it would be amazing to see these things come to fruition this year.
Yeah, no, I mean it is again quite amazing. A strategic Bitcoin reserve. I mean, just that level of recognition and that level of reliance on this asset, is just incredibly important, and also, makes a lot of sense. It just makes a lot of sense. I've never worked in the Treasury. I'm not, take everything I say with a grain of salt as it relates to Treasury and Treasury policy. But I think diversification is a good idea in general when you're trying to manage a portfolio or manage a bunch of money. So I think there's a lot of merit to the idea.
Yeah, and I know there's talks of, yes, the Bitcoin Reserve, but also a digital stockpile. I don't know if that will actually come to fruition, but it would include other digital assets as well. So we'll see what Trump and the administration decide to do.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Tony, but incidentally, I don't think that's the most important thing. I think it's great that the administration is focused on that, and I think there's benefits to be had. But I do think the regulatory issue has got to be solved, and it's got to be solved quickly. And I believe, I don't know, but I believe that's going to require congressional action. My take on the situation in the U.S. is we are behind. So in Europe, and Bitstamp is a very global business. So our business in Europe, in many respects, is thriving because of a different level of regulatory clarity with the MiCA framework and other things. So it has enabled institutions and banks in particular to get involved in a way that is not currently possible in the US, just as one example. So I believe that Congress needs to act. There needs to be a framework that, for instance, defines the jurisdictions here between CFTC and SEC and how that all fits together with crypto, because it doesn't fit neatly into traditional structures there. And then those regulators need to create rules and do it transparently, not by enforcement where we're all trying to guess what the rules are. So that I hope the administration prioritizes and becomes an initial focus.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. That is the thing a lot of people are waiting for, the market's waiting for, because there's still some Wild West activities happening in the crypto space. We need the regulations and that protects consumers, but also fosters innovation. Let's talk about Bitstamp. For those who may not know, tell us about Bitstamp and the different services you guys offer.
Sure. Thanks. So as I mentioned, Bitstamp's the longest running crypto exchange. We're quite proud of our track record in that regard. We do serve, just starting at the highest level, we do serve retail investors. We've got 5 million or so retail customers. We also serve in institutions, and we have a growing and really strong cohort of institutional clients. And we believe that diversity makes our markets really healthy and really reliable. And Bitstamp, our claim to fame is generally that we believe we have the most extensive regulatory licensing footprint in the business, and that we have always prioritized regulatory compliance and professional governance as a company, even at the expense of growth, probably in the early years. And that was, going back to our founders, and I wasn't there at Bitstamp at the time, but my belief, and based on my conversations with them, they anticipated this moment. They anticipated a time when mainstream adoption will happen, and specifically institutions will get involved, in more of a complete way. And so they, back in 2015, 2016, started making decisions to prepare Bitstamp to be an obvious choice, particularly for institutions. So what did they do? They firstly separated custody from the exchange. So we had that technology. We outsourced it to a licensed custodian, BitGo. Why? Because the institutions generally get worried about that counterparty risk when those two things are together. The next thing they did was they got a license. So we were the first to ever get a license, which was in Luxembourg. And that started us down the path. We have 60 plus licenses around the world today. And the third thing they did was, which I thought must have been quite radical at the time, is, they made the decision in 2016 to start getting global financial audits from a Big Four accounting firm. And, I'm pretty sure in 2016, there weren't many crypto companies thinking about global financial audits. And because of that, we're the only ones who can say we have 8 years of clean audit opinions from a Big Four accounting firm. And that has defined Bitstamp to a pretty great degree. We just do things right. We don't mess around. We want to make the confidence that our customers have in us kind of beyond reproach.
That's great. I love that, going back to 2016, you guys are doing these audits, and if only the industry had that standard, or, more exchange, we wouldn't have FTX and all this madness that took place, right? And then I love that you guys outsource your custody to like a trusted custodian like BitGo. That's really great. So no commingling, and once again, FTX is the example.
I couldn't agree more, obviously. And the only other thing I would add about Bitstamp is, as I started to mention, we're truly global. So, our heritage is in Europe. We were founded in Europe. Europe is still 65% of our total business, but we have a strong and growing business in the U.S. and in the Americas, and also in Asia.
Now, there was news last year, I believe, that Robinhood had acquired Bitstamp. Tell us about that acquisition and how you'll be working together.
Yeah, we're really excited about this, and I can't comment much about it because it's a transaction in progress. But what I can say is what we said publicly when we announced the acquisition, that it will take some time to get through regulatory approvals. I mentioned we got a lot of licenses. That's all progressing very, very well. We said when we announced that we expect to be done with that process, the regulatory approvals, and realize the change of control in June of 2025, and we are on track for that timeline. Still, it's of course difficult to predict with precision because regulators, kind of operate on their own timelines, but everything is progressing very, very well. We're quite excited about it. The combination is very complementary, right? So, they're they're 100% retail focused today, and as I mentioned, we have a really strong and growing institutional business. They're primarily U.S. In terms of their current customer base, and we're more skewed towards Europe. So these things will, I think, create a really powerful combination.
Oh, for sure. And then Bitstamp, as far as services you offer, I'm assuming you include the top crypto assets. Do you offer staking? I'm assuming spot trading, futures trading, and things like that.
Yeah, great question. So we're primarily a spot exchange today, although we do have a derivatives offering coming soon, which I can mention, although we haven't promoted yet. And we do have a global set of spot offerings that support our spot exchange. What we believe about the derivative side of the marketplace is, as I mentioned earlier, it dwarfs the spot side of the crypto marketplace in terms of overall volume and market cap, if you will. And it's growing faster for all the right reasons. It's because these, as an asset class, crypto is maturing. However, the vast majority of that volume is on venues that I would characterize as offshore, offshore or in lightly regulated jurisdictions. And that's of great concern to me as somebody who's been in the industry for a while and believes so deeply in what we're doing. Where have I heard of this before, where a venue becomes large and is in a lightly regulated jurisdiction? Oh, I remember, it was FTX. Yes. So I think the industry really needs to step back and think, so we don't repeat history here. So 95% of a giant derivatives market is too much to be in those venues. That might have been okay 5 years ago, but in 2025 and going forward, it just can't be. So Bitstamp, given everything I said about our regulatory posture, we think we can bring a solution to that. And I think others can and need to as well, so that traders and investors have alternatives that are liquid, that are not in some jurisdiction that might not be as rigorous or as trustworthy as others.
Yeah, great point. Because I still see some new derivatives platform or exchanges pop up, and they're like, no KYC and all these things, and I'm like, that's probably not going to last very long with the regulations coming into place. To your point, like 5-6 years ago, it was a young market,
yeah.
But now I don't think that's going to fly. So yeah, we want to have regulated institutions and things buttoned up, guardrails in place, and much more.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, I would love to get your thoughts on your future outlook for crypto exchanges and platforms like Bitstamp. And in the context of, look, there's ETFs being launched, there's platforms like Robinhood, there's PayPal and so forth. How would Bitstamp separate itself from these companies? What are some of the things you guys plan to offer, and maybe eventually tokenize assets, right? They're going to tokenize stocks and commodities, and maybe Bitstamp will offer stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, there's a couple ways to think about what's happening here. From a purely exchange standpoint, and this is a gross oversimplification, but what are we good at? And what are exchanges good at? They're good at matching buyers and sellers, right? And doing it transparently and doing it, incredibly efficiently. And so it doesn't have to be a single commodity or type of commodity or asset that is in play for an exchange. So what does that mean? That means exchanges, should think about diversifying into, for instance, you mentioned tokenized securities or tokenized assets of other types. That would be a natural growth. That is something we are focused on. We have a strategy there. and a set of initiatives that we'll be able to communicate more about in second half of this year. But something we're very, very excited about, as everybody is, the possibilities associated with tokenization in general are just immense. You can do so many things, and there's so many types of assets that lots of retail investors or buyers and sellers don't have access to today. But with a tokenization process, then that could really democratize a lot of markets, which I think is quite exciting. So yeah, tokenization is really important. You also mentioned a minute ago staking and some of the yield bearing products and services. Those I think are really important for exchanges, and also something that we offer in select geographies. In Europe, for instance, we have a lending offering where our customers can choose to lend their crypto for a yield, and we do that via a partner. But the point of that is we do it quite transparently and differently than it had been done in the past. We do it in the Bitstamp way, if you will. And then the other way to think about the future, I think you mentioned Robinhood and Cash App and some of these guys. There's a lot of banks out here, also banks globally and in the U.S. that have tremendous amount of loyal customers that really trust them. But I think they're finding themselves in a situation where their depositors, their customers, have to leave their ecosystem to buy Bitcoin, or to use a stablecoin to transact somewhere. And they're getting increasingly concerned about that. And I would too, if I were them, right? So I think there needs to be there will be a convergence, of either led by banks or led by fintech companies, great fintech or payments companies, where they bring a lot of these banking and financial services capabilities together in one app, and from an exchange perspective, we would love to support that. It doesn't have to be us at the front end. We can be the liquidity at the back end. But I do think that phenomenon is happening, and I do think exchanges diversifying into different asset classes is happening.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a great point of mentioning that you could power the back end, right? So if it's a bank and they don't want to build all these things out, they just go to you guys, plug you in, and then they can offer the customers crypto, but you're powering the back end. Yeah.
Exactly. In fact, we have that offering we call it Bitstamp as a service. And in Europe, I alluded to this earlier. In Europe, we have a lot of a growing business here, particularly in the banking sector, because they're not going to build it at this point, right? So they're going to need to rely on somebody who has the full regulatory stack, like we do, and the full technology stack, and just plug it in so that their customers don't have to leave in order to buy a few dollars of Bitcoin.
Yeah, great point. What's on your roadmap for this year?
Oh, well, we're very excited about addressing this derivatives situation I mentioned. And again, like I said, we haven't announced this yet, but suffice it to say that outside of the U.S., a little bit different equation in the U.S., but outside of the U.S., and specifically in Europe, we have the licenses, specifically a MiFID license, that would enable us to offer derivatives and particularly perpetual swaps in a fully regulated fashion in a trustworthy, jurisdiction. And beyond that, securities or tokenized securities or what have you. So in the Bitstamp way, we've gotten our licensing foundation in place so that now we can build offerings that provide a really safe and sound regulated alternative to what's in the market today. So that's a primary focus for us. In addition to that, as I mentioned, we're in the US looking to get back into the art and science and ball game of growth. So for the last couple of years, when the regulatory environment has been so uncertain, like many, we continued to grow our business, but maybe in a more quiet way than would be typical. And we also, true to form for Bitstamp, we're also quite conservative in terms of our token listings and our offerings. So, for instance, when the SEC brought actions against some of our competitors and they named certain tokens, we automatically trade halted those tokens, even if we could not understand why the SEC picked them, even if we had, legal opinions saying that it was okay. We just took a very conservative posture. Same thing with staking in the US. There were actions brought about staking offerings. We think our staking offering is different, but we paused it. So now in 2025, we want to get back into the business, albeit in a disciplined and thorough way, to revisit those tokens and also new tokens that have come out in the meantime, and also staking products.
That's great. And I understand. I actually worked at a small crypto exchange in the United States, which had to close its doors because it didn't want to deal with things like as you mentioned, right? Wells notices and get into massive lawsuits. So it feels like the dark cloud has been lifted, and companies like yourself
Yeah,
can get back to focusing on growth, building great products, and much more.
exactly. Yeah, the way everyone said this a million times, but the way the SEC was operating, it really made it quite uncomfortable, even for a company like Bitstamp. Like, we just want to do it right. Just tell us what's right, we'll do it. I mean, no questions asked. We know how to deliver compliant processes, but it was never quite clear what was right. And the only way that that the SEC seemed to want to address the issue was via enforcement. And if they bring an action, if they bring a Wells notice and or a lawsuit, it's crippling for a business. It's crippling. It costs millions upon millions upon millions of dollars just to defend yourself, even if you're 100% correct and above board. So it's that. To your point, it's good that we seem to be. It's not done yet, but we seem to be moving beyond it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to get your thoughts on the Bitcoin ETF and Ethereum ETFs. Obviously, Bitcoin ETF, a massive success, fastest growing ETFs in the history of the ETF market. I blew out records out of the water. What are your thoughts? And then there's talks of getting XRP and Solana ETFs, other altcoins this year.
Well, it's just the phenomenon of the Bitcoin ETF just can't be underestimated in terms of legitimizing the entire idea for lots and lots of people and institutions. So that's great. And from a Bitstamp perspective, to us, that is growing the pie. Literally growing the pie. It's creating an avenue for individuals and institutions that are comfortable with it. They know how to deal with ETFs. They know what an ETF means. They have those access points, well paved, and therefore they join a marketplace that they otherwise, wouldn't take the time to find the access points. So similarly with Solana and XRP, which I think are both, going to come. I don't know on what timeline, but it's just going to do the same thing. It's going to open up new possibilities. Both of those assets have a story. They have they have an ecosystem. There's an awful lot happening, and participating in that side of the crypto marketplace is a little bit different than Bitcoin because of what's being built within those ecosystems. And so I'm excited that more classes of investors are going to get smarter and get more grounded in what is cutting edge across the crypto sphere, if you will.
Mm. And then also your thoughts on the stablecoin market, which has been booming. You have a lot of new folks issuing stablecoins, even like Ripple. They just launched a stablecoin. PayPal has a version. I know the folks at Robinhood is working on a conglomerate stablecoin. I remember speaking to I think it's Johan Kerbat at Robinhood,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's just so it seems the stablecoin market is heating up. There's many layers to this because if the United States does it very well or right, it could help maintain the world reserve currency status of the U.S. dollar, and the political aspect of all that, of course.
Yeah, of course, and you are correct, or we're seeing the same thing. Just there's a bit of a proliferation of new stablecoin projects, um, and they all have a slightly different context or strategy behind them, but they all carry a lot of possibilities associated with them. So what I mean specifically is, for instance, some of them um, are more geared towards sharing rewards with infrastructure providers. So BitGo, for instance, BitGo is launching a stable coin, and part of their concept, as I understand it, is the yield. So the underlying assets supporting these stable coins generate an incredible amount of yield. If you look at Circle and if you could look at Tether, you would see just a lot of zeros, like just enormous businesses built around this yield, but they don't share a lot of that yield.
Right.
Some of these new projects, that's their whole concept, is like, actually, we want to reward the infrastructure that is, providing access to use of the stable coin. And then at the same time, like, the killer app side of stablecoins just keeps getting more and more pronounced. The ability to just move dollars or euros, seamlessly and without cost, across a network or across an ecosystem is never going to go out of style. There's still, Western Union and other places that charge an incredible amount to move money, and it takes a couple days. It's that's ripe for innovation, let's say.
Yeah, for sure. And to your point, like stablecoins seem to be the killer use case of blockchain. Obviously, there's going to be more, with tokenization and stuff like that, but stablecoin being the first. Um, and it's incredible. I feel like we can hit, if we haven't, if we're close to it as yet, maybe $1 trillion market cap for stablecoins, probably by the end of the year or next year. We'll see, but things are heating up.
I think it's possible, and I think what's interesting is how many different. There's two things that are interesting to me. One is how many different stablecoin projects will get traction. I don't think it's going to be just one, but I don't think it's going to be 100 either. And then also currencies. So, the USD stablecoin market is by far the one that has gotten traction. But I'm curious to see if Euro stablecoins, of which there are some really quality projects out there, will get traction, or Brazilian real, or some other important fiat currencies. And you mentioned the political side of this, which is interesting too. I am a firm believer in what you said, which is, the U.S. dollar enjoys a rarefied space in the global financial ecosystem, and if we, the U.S., for instance, stifle crypto or do not support USD stable coins, then it will be, I think, negatively affected over time. It will erode. So healthy USD stable coins will, I think, support the US dollar as a global currency and a global reserve currency. And so I'm glad to see the administration's posture on this, for instance, versus a central bank stable coin, which I think would disrupt that possibility.
Yeah, to your point, it seems like the CBDC movement has kind of died down, and the governments are leaning more towards private sector stablecoins. Um, but we'll see. Maybe some other countries may still move forward with CBDCs, but at least here in the United States, it seems like
Yeah.
it's dead on arrival.
Yeah, I believe so. I hope so, because I think both in terms of, you know, pure economics, it's better, but I also think the privacy aspect is really, really important too. But in China, it's all CBDC. You know, that's the marketplace there. So, see.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Um, Now, I hope you don't mind me asking you about this, but meme coins have been going crazy. It's madness, right? It's a wild, wild west. Look, I want to make sure I preface this question. There are certain meme coins like Dogecoin, which have been around for a long time. You're not going to get rug pulled by Dogecoin. It's not, it wasn't created last week or last night on Pump Fun, right? But there's a lot being created. The president launches own, and a lot of people are getting hurt and rugged. How does Bitstamp look at these things, and even if there are some quality meme coins like your Doge coins that you're planning to list, how do you guys approach it?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's it's something that is impossible to ignore. To your point, it's there's just a lot. There's a lot of projects that are getting real traction, and so and to your point, the longest running ones that like Doge and Pepe, these are generally, I think, more trusted, and they're too big now to be like some pump and dump, scheme, which is great.
Yeah.
I think from a Bitstamp perspective, for tokens in general, we're very choosy. We have a very rigorous process where we look at these projects, not just from a regulatory perspective, although that's very important, but also from a technology perspective, from a usability or a commercial perspective, a security, information security kind of perspective. We try to look out for our customers. So when we list something, it kind of has our seal of approval. We're not the kind of exchange that just throws stuff up, see what happens. Now, meme coins, it's more challenging to understand the purpose, right? To be blunt. However, to your point, some of them have real communities behind them, like Doge. Like Doge has a very vocal, loyal, growing community around it. So in that regard, as an exchange operator, we have to make it available. We've got to make it available to customers, and they use it to move value around. And perhaps there's a set of possibilities being built on it, over time. But we won't be the first to list any new meme coin for all the reasons you alluded to. Like, I think there is a real speculative side of this proliferation of meme coins, and we don't want to really be a party to that. Even if there's money to be made, frankly, that's not why we're in crypto. That's not what we stand for at Bitstamp. I don't mind that those are out there, but that's not really kind of our focus.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you got there's some cleanup that needs to happen here. I don't know how they're going to regulate it, but I believe in the free market. Like if you want to invest in it, go ahead, but just know the risks. But I guess the part of being able to rug people, right? The rug pulls are what hurts a lot of the meme coin market, and it kind of puts a bad reputation because, of course, the mainstream headlines, oh, this guy, Javier Milei, president of Argentina, creates a meme coin and rug pulls people for 87 million. That doesn't reflect well in the market. So we have to figure out some
It's
sort of
not good.
balance. Yeah.
It's not good. Yeah. And yeah, when it gets like directly integrated with politics, either in our country or other countries, then it really also gets complicated because, buying the token can be viewed, I think, as, trying to create influence. And that's obviously should be very separate.
Yeah, absolutely. Bobby, I got some wrap up questions here for you. First, if you could create your own metaverse, what would the theme be? Or if you put
Um,
your Oculus on and
yeah,
imagine.
yeah. Let me go. This might sound corny, but one of the things that intrigues me about the metaverse or metaverses in general is like utopian ideas. So I think it would be diversity. believe it or not. Like, if that was the thematic headline and all the people that gravitated towards that metaverse had that in mind, I wonder if it would create new possibilities.
Oh, for sure. Rapid fire questions. Favorite food?
Food?
Hmm.
Oh, God, pizza.
Favorite musician or band?
Oh, that's a really, really hard one for me. I'm also a musician. I play in bands, so it's a really tough one. I'll tell you one of my favorites, Elvis Costello.
Nice. Favorite movie?
Man, I'm gonna sound like a stereotype, but The Godfather.
It's classic. Favorite book?
Favorite book. You're gonna ruin my reputation. Uh, my favorite book is actually this very, very old book of poems by E. Cummings.
Mm. And when you're not working at Bitstamp, what are you doing for fun as a hobby?
Um, so as I mentioned, I play guitar and I play in bands, write songs. That's both for sanity reasons and to keep the other side of my brain working. So that takes a lot of time. Something I truly love. I also do triathlons,
Ah, nice.
which keeps me moving. And then, yeah, my family. I've got a great family. I've been very fortunate and blessed in that regard. So those things that come to mind.
Nice. A follow-up question on the guitars, because I play guitar. You can't see it, but I have a Les Paul. I have a Fender Strat in the back there, along with an
Nice.
acoustic. What is your favorite guitar to play?
Well, my favorite guitar is a '68 Gibson Dove that I have in Chicago. It's an acoustic, obviously, and my electric is a Telecaster. And
Nice.
yeah, those are my babies.
I want to get one more baby, but my wife would probably kill me. A Gretsch White Falcon. I want to get one of
Oh, I also want a Gretsch. I do.
Yeah, my wife's already complaining about I'm piling up guitars here, so. Bobby, great chatting with you. Love what Bitstamp is doing. I would love to have you back on in the future as things unfold for Bitstamp, especially with the integration with Robinhood and much more. Well, thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you, Tony. It's really, really a blast, and anytime.